Okay. There we go. Okay, Bruce, I think we're going to turn it over to you.
Okay, everybody. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but this is gonna be not as long as usual, but it's gonna be very interesting. I'm gonna be talking about the railways in Ukraine during the war right now and how they've affected the war. Very fascinating subject. I've been doing a lot of reading into it, and I actually have a friend over there who's in the railway service. I've gotten a lot of good information from him. I will say straight out biases. My grandfather was born in Kiev, and so I definitely do have a bias, and so I make no bones about that. Ukraine, it's called Ukraine Railways, probably one of the most amazing episodes of history, and it's still being written. So I'm not doing a Google slideshow. I'm doing something a little different. Let me share my screen. I've done so many Google slideshows at school, kind of tired of them. So, hey, where did that go? Error. There we go. Now, I just sent an email. I sent a bunch of YouTube videos about the railways. I'm not going to show any YouTubes because we can all do that on our own. But
they're not particularly reliable.
Yeah, well, they're terrible on Zoom. But anyway, I mean, here's some basic information that, I mean, there's a lot of amazing things. Okay, it's called Ukrainian Railways. You know, the pronunciation is a Udikrazyanitsia. Apparently, my great grandfather was a conductor when it was part of the Imperial Russian Railways. Now, it was created in 1991, of course, when the Soviet Union fell and Ukraine got their independence. And most of the rails were built by the Soviets. But in the past couple of years, they've been doing a lot of rebuilding of their rail system. You know, only to have a lot of them being constantly attacked by the Russians, or the orcs, as the Ukrainians call them. So here's something interesting. It's the 13th largest railway in the world. And again, I'm talking about Ukraine. I'm not talking about the Soviet Union or Russia. I'm just talking about Ukraine. Not the biggest country in the world. It's not a small country either. It's got 23,000 kilometers of rail. That's their total track length. And it is the 6th largest rail passenger transporter in the world and the 7th largest freight transporter. As many of you know, Ukraine is one of the largest, or was until a couple months ago, one of the largest food producers in the world, sunflower oil, grain, and so forth. And freight is, I mean, the freight lines have been there since the 1830s when the Russians started building, because there's just so much, there's always been a lot of industry and agriculture there. But number 7, that's quite a bit. You know, their gauge is, you know, they say 1,520 millimeter, or 4 foot 11 and 27.32 inches. And they have, you can see they have almost 500,000 employees. Now, on to some pictures here. Now, what makes it very interesting is, of course, the war. That's what I'm going to talk about. It's you know, the history books are going to probably write this, and history's going to probably show this is one of the most interesting war railways in history. They've literally, the railways have literally carried, you know, several million refugees going westward towards Europe, and probably thousands, hundreds of thousands of tons of military equipment going east. And ever since day one of the invasion, the Russian orcs have basically been going after the railways, and for good reason too. It's been a primary source. But what's amazing is this guy. They've got a very interesting director. This guy here. His name is Alexander Kamishin. Okay, you can look him up on YouTube. This is an interesting guy. Okay, you see that hairdo? He's not a hipster. That's the traditional Ukrainian hairstyle a lot of people wear now, the old Cossack. Okay, the guy's only 32, and he's basically called the, probably one of the most amazing CEOs in railroad history, because he transformed it from a pretty, corrupt, typical Eastern European railway system to a wartime railway system. Now here's some good pictures, and this shows the rolling stock. Ironically, about a year ago, they did a massive modernization program, and they got a lot of that modernization done before the invasion, so that's really helped. And I mean, you can see some of the rolling stock they use. They use the new Hyundais. And right now they're using everything. They're even using steam trains right now. One of the first things in the first few days of the invasion, the orcs basically, I mean, they went after the railways, of course, and they bombed a lot of the old, beautiful railroad stations that were built. And unfortunately, several hundred people have died in these bombings. One of the railway stations in Mariupol, they hit the terminal of 50 people inside, a lot of kids. But they, it said that this guy, I saw an interview with this guy, Komiatsin. He said before the war, it would take about a week to repair damaged track. And now he's got special crews, and they can turn over something in a day or two just to get the train running again. As of 3 weeks ago, they've had 122 deaths of railway workers from the war, railroad workers, and people working on the trains. And from all indications, their railways are not slowing down. I mean, they're just getting bigger, and they're moving quicker and quicker, and they're moving harder and harder. But you can see they have, they have the Korean Hyundais. These are from Czech Republic. About a month ago, I tried to get some commemorative scale models, and of course, they've been sold out for about a month or two. They've got some of their own indigenous trains they built, like the Tarpon. They build a lot of their own trains. There's a big company here, the Creative Railway Car Building Works. So they do build a lot of their own. Here's some older stuff. They do a lot of intercity transport, but of course, like I said, a lot of freight. These trains from Latvia. And so they're always yellow and white and blue, their national colors. And it's really interesting that, like I said, right about a year before the war, they started revamping the whole system. Yeah, here's some of they have beautiful train stations. This is the main station in Kiev. And this one actually was hit by a few missiles, but it's still standing. In the railway station, they always have this characteristic, what do you call it? This cone. It's just part of their amazing architecture.
So most of the locomotives are electric, but I saw one picture it mentioned in the caption that they had some diesels too.
Yeah, I think they're going more with diesels too, especially with the war, because as incompetent as the invasion was, the Russians did know to go after the electrical grid to cripple the trains. But before the war, they had already started stocking up on diesels, because I think they knew it was coming. As I said, they even have they're even putting in my friend told me they're even putting in some old steam engines they've had in the museums that they do commemorative rides with. They've if you watch what's going on there, there's a lot of they put up memorials really quickly there, and they've already got a memorial for the railway workers there, and there'll probably be more deaths, but really from a historical point, I mean, it's really amazing, and it reminds you of what the U.S. railroad system in World War II. So I sent a bunch of really good video links, and one of them is aerial drone footage of the various railways throughout the country. It's pretty breathtaking. It's a heavily railed country. If you look at some of the newscasts, I mean, you see rails all over the place. And I think, as a lot of you know, the old Soviet Union was heavily railroaded, and that, of course, goes back to the Russians started building railroads in the 1830s, I believe. Or no, I think actually, I think their first one, no, 1829, if I recall, was when they started laying their rails. So they've always had a lot of rails there. And the amazing thing is, again, how their trains are going east and west. They've done an amazing job carrying refugees, like to Poland and to Moldova and Romania, and then going the other way, carrying out weapons, munitions, food, and other supplies. And with the danger they face, I mean, every day, I mean, they're just going full steam ahead, no pun intended. And my friend over there, he says it seems like if anything, it's just the war has just increased the energy of the rail system. And there's more and more coming. A lot of countries now, they're starting to donate diesels, 70s and 80s stuff they've had lying around. And if you know anything about the Ukrainians are very good at improvising things. So they go, they get them right into the shops and they regauge them, and probably quicker than you think, because they can do amazing things over there. So that's my very short. I'm giving you the information. Any questions?
Yeah, are they able to transport much grain out of the country on the rail?
No, because okay, yes and no. They've been sending it westward into Poland, because their ports are all blocked up. But I actually just read today, they were able to get 9 ships out, and that's going to affect the railways, because they're going to start shipping it out, because they just haven't had their normal volume to ship out. So they focused it on other things. But yeah, they need to start getting the grain out, because it's going to affect the world food situation.
The problem they've got is all the bridges going into Romania have already been blown.
Yeah.
And every time they put them together, they get blown again. And that's their only export mechanism is to get the grain by rail and truck out of the country. There's been some discussion about the new missile systems that, the rocket systems that we've sent over, about them. Apparently, they've actually been attacking ships,